All right. We're here with our review of patch 5.2. This is our more in-depth version of the patch notes. You know, not just watching the patch notes, actually going over and kind of talking about how each change will affect the meta, if it will, what gods it'll affect, if it does, etc., etc. This patch was actually quite small, which is interesting in itself in terms of balance. This indicates to me that high-res is fairly comfortable where the meta is right now, that they don't mind what they're necessarily seeing in streams or scrims or anything, which means the meta that it is kind of now could standardly be our meta we see going into the spring major and minor league SPL splits. So this is kind of where we're at, and there are a little bit of changes, so we'll go over it. We got a bunch of skins coming out in this patch. That's not really what this is about, though. If you want to see the skins, I'll just, like, stop the screen for a couple of seconds on each of these. But for the most part, this ain't about skins. This is about balance and what the balance means for us. But there are some pretty cool skins. There's some super weeby skins, some super anime skins. The best skin in this patch is DJ Ganesha by far. It's not even close. It's just not even close. All right, we've got a new adventure. You protect a fox, keep the foxy alive in anime world, and you win like 12 weeb coins or something. It's an adventure. It looks pretty fun, but we're here to talk about balance changes. So, Step 1 God balance, Ares is getting changed a little bit. They're increasing his shackle minion damage, not his shackle player damage, from 50 to 130 to 70 to 150, increasing it by 20 damage per chain every rank. So if you were to hit 3 chains on a minion, it would be an extra 60 damage, or basically the equivalent of 1 more chain of damage the way it was priorly working. And Bolster Defenses had its mana cost reduced by 20 at each rank to promote you to use Bolster Defense more. This is obviously an attempt to get Ares into a spot where he can clear waves. Obviously, Ares has historically been a bad wave clearer. Wave clear is incredibly important for supports right now. Because of the way buff invades work, so you have to be able to clear the wave to win that, to go get the buffs, to get the early level 2, to try to get the other buffs, to keep fighting. I mean, if Ares were to hit the wave with all 3 chains, now keep in mind, in order for Ares to use multiple chains on a wave, he has to hit a god through the wave. It's very hard. You have to be focused on trying to hit the wave and the god, which means at best you're usually looking at about 3 minions. You can either hit the archers or you can hit the melees usually. Nobody's going to stand through all 6 minions for you. But it'll do 210 damage if you get 3 chains off inside that, which is a lot of damage. But you also have to factor in that you're going to be tanking the minions after the very first chain. They're all going to be hitting you and aggroed on you. So is it good for Ares? Sure. Is it gonna put him any more in the meta than he is now? I doubt it. Neath getting a little bit of a buff as well, pretty tiny. They're increasing her base power and her base power per level scaling. Basically, Neath's auto attacks were crap. They're trying to make them a little bit better, even though she's a ability-based hunter. It's like, hey, let's make her hit a little bit harder with her autos, so that way you know, she doesn't suck quite so bad in the 1v1 trades. With the changes we see later, nerfing lifesteal for hunters, gods like Neath have a better shot in the meta because she's got a built-in heal. Gods like Kurnanos and Neath, maybe you start to see a little bit more of because they don't have to go into those lifesteal items. That will be interesting. Next up, a buff that I don't know why this happened. They reduced Berserker Barrage's cooldown from 13 to 11 on Thor. The reasoning being that the cooldown doesn't actually start until the end of the animation, which means that the cooldown is more like 15 seconds than 13. So by making it an 11-second cooldown, it's really like a 13-second cooldown. I just don't think Thor needed to be touched. Does it help Thor? Yeah. Is it going to do anything? Are there going to be a bunch of Thors in your games? No. It's just kind of a quality of life change for Thor, but still, I don't think he really needed it. Vulcan, increasing his magma bomb from 70 to 80%. Basically, they think Vulcan was super affected by the Rada to hoodie change, and the fact that nobody's picking up Rada to hoodie anymore. This is another change that I feel like is just a change for a change that doesn't really mean anything. If you were picking Vulcan beforehand, you're still going to pick him now, and if you weren't, you're not going to pick him up now. A 10% scaling buff on his magma bomb is like a decent bit of damage, but like in the late game, if you've got 600 power, that's a 60 damage change. So like, you know, it's fine. It's good for Vulcan. Congrats, Pretty Prime. You got a little buff. You didn't even have to ask for it, but like, it's not going to change Vulcan at all. The item balance changes are much bigger than the, are much more impactful, I would say, than the God balance changes this week. And specifically at Hunters. Hunters really got the short end of the stick this week. So Deathbringer, physical power going down from 50 to 40. This isn't going to change Deathbringer being a super strong item. The reason why Deathbringer is so strong wasn't because it gave so much power. It was because it gave so much crit chance and it gave you bonus crit damage. That stays. So now it just gives 40 physical power, the 35% crit chance, and the 25% critical damage bonus. If you were building Deathbringer beforehand, there's no reason why this should super affect your build. You should still be building Deathbringer now. It's just going to be as strong. It's 10 less damage to have 10 less damage on Hunters, but you're going to be fine with this change. It's the other two changes that are going to be more impactful. Devo's Gauntlet increased cost from 2,100 to 2,300. Now, we don't know where this cost increase is necessarily going to be, but I imagine it's just going to be on the tier 3 Devos and not going to like increase the price of tier 2, I would imagine. But that's a big deal. 200 gold. You have to stay an extra wave or two as a ADC. You have to get a couple extra camps, whatever, in order to get your Devo gloves online. It's a little bit riskier. You've got an increased chance of dying before you go back. You start stacking a little bit later, so your damage comes online a little bit later. Not a huge change, but 200 gold's pretty decent, especially in the early game when you're trying to build your Devo gloves. That combined with the Deathbringer change, both have, you know, a minor impact on the Hunter, but together, even more so. And the third change to Hunter is Aussie getting decreased physical penetration from 15 to 10. I don't know if they did something else. They said on the patch notes that they also decreased, I believe, the attack speed by 5%. I don't know if they have decided to revert that change or if they simply forgot to put it on these patch notes. I do not know which one it is. Regardless, at least minimum 5 pen gone from Aussie. There might also be another 5% attack speed gone from Aussie. The combination of these three changes hurt Hunter a little bit. Hunter's quite strong right now. Honestly, I don't think they're as strong as mages right now, and mage items did not get touched, so I'm not super pumped about Hunters getting nerfed, because it just means that mages as Hunters, you know, mages in the ADC role are just going to become that much more popular because of these nerfs to Hunters. Next up, we got Talisman of Energy getting a huge buff. They decided it was too hard to stack Talisman of Energy at 10 stacks, and it was. So they removed it, they put it back down to 5 stacks, and then doubled all the stacks that it gave you, so it still gives you the same amount of effect, which means that now you get 10% movement speed from 5 stacks, 10% attack speed, and 50 MP5 from 10 stacks. Obviously, this is, you know, works kind of like War Flag. It only lasts for a limited time. But you clear one wave and then you go into a team fight, giving your team an extra 10% movement speed and attack speed. That's a huge deal. The MP5 won't be that big of a deal by that point in the game. But the attack speed and movement speed, that's huge in the middle of a team fight. That's just helping your team avoid an ability by getting them out of the way. Help them get in one more auto attack so they kill the hunter first. Lots of potential with the new Talisman of Energy. I imagine teams are definitely going to be required to pick this up. Probably the support or the solo laner having to decide, who to get at each game. Next up, a little bit of a mid-guardian male buff. They just increased the physical protections by 10. Basically, a lot of people are getting slammed right now by these giant, crit builds, right? And your only option really right now is to build spectral armor, but with a mid-guardian male having a little bit more physical protections, it opens up the path of getting mid-guardian to help deal with it, because then if they hit you, they attack slower. Obviously, if you attack slower, you can't crit as much. And now by giving a little bit extra physical protections, it becomes a little bit more enticing to actually pick up. Atlantis Boat getting a buff. I still haven't seen anybody actually buying this item. Maybe with this buff, somebody will try it. They just decrease the gold by 100 and then increase the attack speed by 5%. So basically, it just gives you a ton of attack speed and a ton of movement speed. But in a crit build meta, I don't know if this is going to be picked up, because it doesn't really give any power behind your crit chance, And that's all of the changes this week. Like I said, it was a small balance patch. I think out of the items, Talisman of Energy is going to have a huge positive impact. And then this triple combo right here is going to have a negative impact on hunters overall. A pretty small patch, like I said at the start, that indicates to me that Hi-Rez is fairly content at where the game is right now. I imagine in the next patch is when we'll see a little bit of harder god nerfs. Probably not super hard item nerfs, but probably more in the directions of, okay, who's really overperforming in their win percentage. But yeah, those are the changes. Not too much. Nothing that's going to super shake up the meta, but just little things here and there. Mostly hunters who might have to worry about, do I bother building Devos? Do I just simply get Trans and maybe a Blood Forge and just go this raw power build for Uller in Neath or something? Could be the way that kind of goes. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, have a twitchin' day, y'all. Thanks everybody for watching the video. If you want to watch more content, go ahead and click yourself down in the corner to watch another one of our videos. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can find that right up on there. And if you want to go ahead and buy some sweet merchandise, guys, you can click that right above my head. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, have a twitchin' day, y'all.